latkes can be filling. I don't know how many latkes I'm making, right?
You're making?
Yes, I am making the latkes.
Wow,
Tomorrow
that
night
sounds
the
like
family's
a lot.
coming and my wife is making the latkes because she loves them very, very much. But she doesn't love you guys as much as I do, so I'm gonna make the latkes. And actually, she's gonna be at work until 7 o'clock. So.
You're gonna have plenty of oil? In the latke? Hope you're gonna cook them with like a bunch of oil.
No, I just put in a drop and it turns into much more. It's
Very cool.
It's amazing.
Whoa.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Wow.
I don't know. It only happens Hanukkah, but it's
That is
the best.
amazing.
It's just the best. Okay. We did Ois Daled, which is, as we said, a number of times, but it has to be repeated because it really is something that you're going to run into a lot in Chassidus. And this is definitely a home address of this idea, a very clear and complete explanation of the idea that mishpatim are also ultimately l'mayla mitam v'das. And just remember, Ois Daled in Tanu Rabbanan from Tafshin Lamed Ches. That's what you have to remember. Okay, and it's in Malukat base. In Ois Hey, the Rebbe taught us the amazing idea of what does it mean to be metamesh shemen shebehechel al pi chsidis. And what shemen? Chochma. What's hechel? Bina. Chochma shebebina is not what I understand, but how I think. And if the Greek can be matama how I think, so then he wins, because I can take anything and turn it into idiocy, right? If I think the wrong way. Okay. So now that I was going to talk a bit nearing the end of the Bible, how we're going to defeat the Greek. In order to be victorious in this milchama, ein maspika aveda shal pitam vadas. It's not enough, it's not sufficient, the aveda shal pitam vadas, rational, calm, cool, and collected aveda, and that we think we're going to engage the Greek in an intellectual discussion, and we're going to emerge from the discussion as the winner. Right? Now that might be we will emerge from the discussion as the winner, but what have we learned? We've already learned this in Pada B'Shalom, right? The Hashgacha Pratis, the Yud Tes Kislev Tesen Yud and Yud Tes Kislev happened right before Hanukkah, as we learn all about the Pada B'Shalom. Pada B'Shalom, the true Padiyah only comes if there's a Gilui of Yechidish B'Nefesh. And any other Padiyah, by definition, leaves over the possibility of a resurgence of the enemy. Right? That's what we learned. Right? So too, that's what the Rebbe is saying here, just in a slightly different language. Engaging the Greek on his level, so that doesn't mean you can't convince him temporarily that you're right, but that doesn't mean that you've won the war. You might have won that battle, but you didn't win the war. Right? Actually, I guess they didn't do it this year because of the war, but the Israeli basketball team always plays the Greek basketball team in they play in this Euro League. So there's always a Greek team. So the Greek team comes to Tel Aviv. The winner in Israel is always seemingly the same team from Tel Aviv. So they come to Tel Aviv to play the Israeli champions on Hanukkah. Like it's cool that the Greeks are playing the Jews on Hanukkah. The name of the team that the Israeli team is Maccabi Tel Aviv, right? Which is really a complete and total internal contradiction, because the last thing in the world the Maccabees would think is a reasonable thing is to walk around in your underwear and try to shoot a ball into a hoop, a la the Greeks, right? Right? Meaning, what is basketball? An expression of Greekhood, sport, and all that, right? So it's just the strangest thing in the world. And so the very fact that we're on the court with them means we lost, right? That is such a completely anti-Hanukkah statement. But most of the players are not from here anyway, so it doesn't matter. But it's always ironic that they play the Greek team. I assume this year that that didn't happen.
Yeah, really funny.
But they schedule the Israeli-Greek game on Hanukkah here. I don't know what Greek holiday we celebrate by going there. I don't know. I'm sure there's some special date when the Jews come. Right? Ein maspika aveda shal pitam vadas. Vafilu lo aveda shel lamayla mitam vadas. And even not that level that's lamayla mitam vadas. And the Rebbe has told us this a number of times, that is hakshura im tam vadas. Meaning, there's a level of makif There's a level of transcendent, super rational behavior that makes sense. Right? It's super rational, but I can explain the need for it in my intellect. Right? And so that is a level of L'mayla mitam v'das, but it's a level of L'mayla mitam v'das that can be explained al pi tam v'das. We talked about that. Intellect itself understands the fact that there might be things that are beyond intellect. We're talking about it now with our intellect, that it doesn't bother us. It's a completely reasonable idea that there's certain things that intellect won't understand. Okay, so even that level won't ultimately allow us to defeat the Greek, because even that level is limited. It's limited to a certain degree. The level of L'mayla mitam v'das is limited by the das, right? I'll allow myself to go beyond tam v'das only to the extent that it seems a reasonable thing to do, right? But I won't go completely beyond. The Maccabean, the Hashmonaim, was irrational what they did. It was absolutely absurd what they did. Right? And no one in their right mind would do such a thing. Oh, in their right mind, no one would do such a thing. That's absolutely true. Right? And yet, they did it. Why? Because of that level of Mesiras Nefesh that will be talked about, called the Zoiv Nitandrish. This is the way it is, and there can't be another way. At a certain point, there's no way of accepting this non-godly reality, whether it's reasonable, unreasonable. You can explain al pitam v'das, it's yirida l'tzarech aliyah, and we have to go through this descent for the purpose of the ascent, and we have to deal with it, and it's all that's fine and good. Right? The best way is to lay low, not make a shturim. My daughter sent a beautiful letter yesterday to everybody on our family group. They're shluchim in Australia. They are in charge. They're in northern Australia, so they're the only shluchim for, the closest shluchim, the closest Jewish, serious Jewish community, the closest mikveh, until they build one. They have a grant in Beth Shem, they're building one. Is a 2.5-hour flight away in Brisbane. So they're in charge of an area it takes about 10 hours to drive from where they are to the end, a place called Mackay. So but they didn't get there because there's a cyclone coming. So they didn't make it to Mackay this Hanukkah, but they did make it to a place called Townsville. Townsville is a big town, huge. There's actually an American army base over there. I don't know exactly, I guess because of the Chinese. There's a huge army base. The biggest Australian army base was full of American soldiers. That is over there in Townsville. And it's a 5-hour drive. They went there for Hanukkah yesterday. They went, it's a 5-hour drive there. They did their Hanukkah thing, and then they drove 5 hours back. And they sent us a picture of them lighting. Our daughter sent, we feel like a young couple. We're lighting our Hanukkah at 1 a.m. Right? Like that's what young couples do, right? So, she told a beautiful story that one of the members they have a Chabad Townsville WhatsApp group, because they go there, a few times a year. They go there. They arrange a Pesach Seder there. They don't go there in Cairns, but they bring Bachrim to do a Seder there, and they get 150 people in the Seder there. So one of the people in the group said that maybe this year, because of all the anti-Semitism, we should lay low and not make such a big shturim for Hanukkah. So they wanted to see what the other people in the group said before they put in their 2 cents. Australian 2 cents is not worth very much. So they waited. Said it was like shluchim talking. All these other people, no, dafka now. We have to be proud, and we have to make more of a shturim, make more noise, and have a bigger Hanukkah event, etc., etc., etc. These are people in Townsville, Australia.
Are these mostly soldiers?
No, our son-in-law became a chaplain in the Australian Army in order to be able to have access to the soldiers. So he does that, right? But no, this is just the locals. So the Baruch Hashem, they had a big Hanukkah event, and that's Hanukkah, right? Al pi tam v'das. What might you say? Lay low a little, be quiet for a while, let things cool down. No, that's not the way the Rebbe works. Dafka now, make more of a shturim. There's more dark, make more light. Right? But that might not necessarily be a reasonable approach, but that's the right approach. That's the proper approach. You can definitely make an argument for the opposite. Al pi tam v'das. Right? But even l'mayla mitam v'das, that's connected to tam v'das, is limited by tam v'das. And what's that? That's a v'edish mitzad b'chinas makif techaya. Maki Fakarav, which we learned about in Pada B'Sholom. So that's review, right? The level that the inspiration of Chaya Shebenefesh, which is temporary. It's very nice, but it's temporary. It doesn't bring about a true change in the Lamata. Why? Why won't that also won't ultimately beat the Greek? Because as soon as the inspiration is gone, the Greek comes back. Mikeven shetimu gam es kol hashmanim shebehechel. Because the Greek was able to reach a very deep place and be matama that. And what does the Rebbe say? That is hainu gam in yonim de kedusha shelamayla mitam vadas, the shemen, which is higher than the Heichel. The Heichel, we said earlier, was the 9th level of Kedusha in the base of Mikdash. They were matama the Shemen Shebeheichel. The power of the Greek is incredibly strong. And the Greek can be matama very powerful levels of Kedusha and turn it into Klipa, which is what they did. And it's not that they haven't been around for a while. Their worldview is basically the prevailing worldview in Western society. I mean, the Greek is very powerful. Who else has been around for 2,000 years? Us, right? But who else? The Romans turned the Greeks, they took Greek reality and made it a little more megushamdik, a little more materialistic and Olam Hazeh centered. So that's basically where we're holding now. But just look at the names of the fraternities in the colleges. Still Greek, right? A very powerful kayach and tuma that's around and still we're still fighting them, right? We're still trying to overcome that. There's all sorts of Jews who are in fraternities with Greek names, right? They probably even have a Jewish fraternity. They must, right? Have a Jewish fraternity with a Greek name. There you go. Okay, see, okay. I mean, I didn't, you can. It's, you can figure those things out without even knowing. Hainu, gamin yonim de kedusha shalamayli mitam vadas. They were able to be matama, transcendent levels of reality, bring it down into a state of klipa. Eile hakshurim mitam vadas. V'nitzochin melchama. How do you beat the Greek? Well, yedei aveded mesiras nefesh davka. Mesiras nefesh, self-sacrifice. Getting to the point where the Jew says, "Azoy v'nit andrish." If it's not elokus, I'm not interested. It's not Elkus, I'm not interested. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to deal with Gashmias. We have to deal with Gashmias. This is amazing sikha in this week's Parsha on the whole story of the Gaviyah. The Gaviyah of Yosef that's found in Binyamin's, I guess he didn't have a knapsack, but whatever he had, right? So we say to them, the brothers say, Chalila, was it Chalila avadecha meyasos kadavar zeh. Right? So of course the question is, what does Chalila mean? What does that mean, Chalila avadecha? So Rashi says, Hulin Lanu. Just like when Avraham Avinu is discussing the whole notion of Sdoim with the Eibishter, he says Chalila Lecha. He says it's pasnished for the Eibishter to judge people, judge everybody based on a few, and if there are some tzaddikim, so then they shouldn't die and they might be able to save the whole city. The whole conversation that Avraham has with the Kodesh Baruch Hu before the Eibishter destroys Sdoim. So there also Avraham says Chalila Lecha, Shefet Kol Haaretz. So Rashi over there also says Hulin L'cha. Now obviously Hulin by a Kadosh Baruch Hu, there's no mundane reality by a Kadosh Baruch Hu, he's Kula Kadosh. But that means it's pasnish, it's not fitting. So here what does it mean? So Rashi adds 2 words to the explanation from Avram. It's not exactly the same. Hulin zeh lanu mashu kazeh, but they use the word Hulin, something not holy. Loshen ganai, a language of something despicable. Right? So the Rebbe says an amazing thing. Chulin by a Yid, something that's not Kadosh by a Jew, is a Ganai, is something despicable. Right? Meaning a Yid is a Davar Kadosh, a Yid is someone holy. So they say, and it's interesting, the Rebbe said, this is the Shvatim, not the Avos, and even though we say we learn from the Avos, we don't, there are certain aspects of the reality of the Shvatim that aren't shaykh to every single one of us, right? Why? Well, there's 12 different Shvatim, so there might be someone who's more shaykh to Shimon and less shaykh to Yehuda, or whatever it happens to be. Right? But this, the Rebbe says, he brings the Alter Rebbe, this, the Rebbe says, is shaykh to all of the Yidden because it's all of the Shvatim saying it together. They're saying this is a collective. So something that's shaykh to the Shvatim as a collective is shaykh to every Jew because it represents all of us. right? Whereas there might be something happening to Yehuda that's not shaykh to every single one of us. Why? Because maybe I'm more shaykh to Reuven. Right? That can certainly be. So from the Aves, we all learn. Lav dafka from the Shvatim. But if there's something collective by the Shvatim, so then all the Yidden can learn from that. So what do they say? Chulin is a Ganai for a Yid. Something that's not holy is a Ganai for a Yid. That doesn't mean we don't involve ourselves in the physical world. Of course we involve ourselves in the physical world. We have to involve ourselves in the physical world in a certain way. Not like the Greek. Not give too much credence to that reality. Everybody else says something really fascinating about Golus and Geula. That story of the Gevia is an incredibly important story in setting up the whole story of the Golus of the Yidden and Mitzrayim, which ultimately results in the Geula. So that idea of involving ourselves in a certain reality, but realizing that that reality isn't ultimate reality. The ultimate reality is a reality of Kedusha, has to be our Gisha, also our approach to Golus. Golus is a reality, but it's not the true reality. Only our bodies are in Golus, our neshama is not in Golus, and we have to realize that Golus is just there in order to bring about the Geula, just like the Chulin is there. Why is there a mundane state of reality? In order for you and I to elevate it to a state of Kedusha, but not to get into it inside itself. So he says an amazing thing. He adds, Rashi adds that word it's not in the Medrash, Loshen Ganai. Why does Rashi say that? Because by the Yidden, Chulin is a Ganai. So that place where Yid experiences that most clearly, that's Yechidah Shebenefesh. God is Alst and Alst is God. God is everything and everything is God. That place. The Inyan of Mesiras Nefesh, he amida b'teikef. This Mesiras Nefesh is standing strong neged kol meini ma'akvi, against all obstacles. Teikef atzmi, an essential strength. Shalamaylam yaseichel legamin, it's completely beyond seichel. Because seichel, as powerful as seichel is, seichel can always be convinced that some other idea might be reasonable. Right? U'kamar Mesiras Nefesh al kiddush Hashem, just like the self-sacrifice for the sanctity of Hashem's name, she'ena mitzad ezes svara sichlis. It's not based on some intellectual idea. There is a level of Mesiras Nefesh that can come from intellect, right? All sorts of people are willing to give up their lives for their countries, right? It's not coming from Yechidah Shebenefesh. A lot of those people don't have a Yechidah Shebenefesh. Okay, say there. So there is such an idea. There's no question. But the ultimate Mesiras Nefesh comes from Yechidah Shebenefesh, that level of Azoy v'nitandrish. This is the way it is, and there is no alternative. And that's the level the Chashmonaim came to. This is the way it is, meaning Elokus is what has to be, and there is no alternative, even temporarily. Even though that didn't make any sense. Right? And that's what the Rebbe says here. He just says it in Lashon HaKodesh. Rather, she efshar klal liyos ba'efen acher, that it's impossible that it should be any other way. In Yiddish, that's a zoy v'nitandrish. That's how the Rebbe said it when he said the Maimer, because that's how it's said. So it's not even a function of my ratzon, because that's the makif of Chaya. That I have an incredibly powerful ratzon to stay connected to the Eibishter. It's beyond that. I might not even want to. Just impossible not to be. It's impossible not to be connected to the Eibishter. That's the level of Mesiras Nefesh that defeats the Greek. Because it might very well be, they'll say temporarily, or for whatever reason, it might be reasonable to compromise relative to certain things. No. And this comes from the connection of the essence of the soul to the essence of the Eibishter. Bechinas Yechidah. Yechidah Shebenefesh, which we learned about in Pada B'Sholem. The inyan Iskashus Atzmis, the whole notion of Iskashus Atzmis, who she'i efshar klal liyos ba'efen acher chas v'sholom. There is no other state of reality. The level of Atzmus, the level of Etzem and Neshama is that level of the Neshama that knows one thing and one thing only, Elokus. There is no other state of reality. In all other states of existence, so there is another state of reality relative to what's happening in revealed reality. Right? That doesn't mean that it has absolute and essential existence. It doesn't, but it's there. Obviously, Elam Hazeh Gashmi, it exists. How do you know it exists? It's not an illusion. It exists. It says in the Torah, Bereshis bara Elokim, it's a Shemayim v'Saaretz. The Eibishter created Shemayim v'Saaretz. It's a pasuk in Torah. It's not an illusion. Right? But what is that? Be'etzem, it's all a Elokus, that's true, but in its revealed state, it's a state of reality that is not revealed godliness and might even contradict godliness to a certain degree, 100%. So in that place, there might be room for movement, room for what one might call compromise. Right? I'll choose my battles. Right? Okay, that's reasonable in that context. A Jew comes to a point where he's not looking at the world from that point of view. He's looking at the world from the point of view of absolute truth. And mitzad absolute truth, there's no such thing as being Machal Shabbos. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing. It's not that it's an option that I've even, it's not even an option that I've decided is not a reasonable option. There is no option. It doesn't exist at that level. That's Yechidah Shebenefesh. And so therefore, in a completely transcendent way, the Jew will fight for Yiddishkeit, fight for their relationship with the Eibishter. Because there is no existence outside of that. What did Yitzhak Avinu understand? Meaning, of course, we know the background of the story, and we know that it wasn't really supposed to happen. Okay, but from their point of view, what was supposed to happen? Yitzhak was supposed to get up in the altar and die, and that's what was supposed to happen. So what did Yitzchak and Avram both understand? That the only way Yitzchak could stay connected to the Eibishter was to give up his life. Right? That was the choice: life in Elam Hazeh or true existence. And it doesn't seem that there was much of a battle that the two of them were going through. As a matter of fact, Al Pi Chassidus, the explanation of that whole story isn't that they did what God wanted. What's the big deal? God said to do this. In most cases of Mesiras Nefesh, you don't have a directive from a Kadosh Baruch Hu saying, okay, right now this is going to happen and I want you to do this. Well, that's sort of easy to do, isn't it? Right? Even if you're Avram Avinu. Even if you're not Avram Avinu. So what's the big deal of the Akedah? So Al Pi Chassidus, the big deal of the Akedah is V'yelchu shneim yachdav. They both did it b'simcha. They're mamish b'simcha doing this. Right? Why? Because what did Yitzhak understand? There's only one way to stay connected to the Eibishter, and that's to give up my life. That's the only way I'm going to stay connected to the Eibishter. And I'm not interested in the life without being connected to the Eibishter. The ultimate expression of Mesiras Nefesh, the source of the Mesiras Nefesh of Yidden for generations. Now, we know that it wasn't supposed to happen. Baruch Hashem, it didn't happen because we're still here. Right? And that level of connection is also a level, as the Rebbe is about to say, there's no pagum, there's no blemish, there's no imperfection. That level, once it's revealed, is complete and total and in a state of absolute health.
But this level, as high as it is, it's really what we're talking about here with the priest. It's still not at the level of the Akedah. Would you say that's true? I mean, because there was absolutely, no reason. Then you couldn't rationalize what was done, what Hashem wanted them to do.
It's true that it was completely counterintuitive, that whole story of the Akedah. There's no doubt about that. Whereas this, there's a fairly clear choice. Either stay connected to Yiddishkeit or live to fight another day. So I'm sure there are a lot of people who are going to say, live to fight another day. That's a perfectly reasonable response. Wasn't the response of the Chashmonai, which the Rebbe used to say is Isias Mashiach now. Chashmonai is Isias Mashiach now. The Rebbe actually said that a number of times. Right? It's also, that's how the Rebbe relates to Bolus, right? It's untenable. It's not that I can rationalize the need for it for another 20 minutes. Huh? Is it possible to rationalize? Yeah, absolutely. Right? It's a necessary situation in order to bring about it. When we talk about Gullus, we talk about it that way. Okay, say they're all Piseichel. But what? Ultimately, you should be in a place where it's impossible.
Crushed.
Yeah, right. Exactly. B'diuk, yefet, kasis lamar, b'diuk. Right? Mikevet shebechinas yichid ein shayach shum pagam v'tuma chas v'shalom. And just as, or since this level of the neshama is not shaykh to any pagam, any tuma, anything that a Jew does in Eilam Hazeh, positive or negative. It affects different levels of the neshama, positively or negatively. It does not affect Yechidah Shebenefesh. Yechidah Shebenefesh is what it is. It's an essential connection to the Eibishter, not affected positively by a mitzvah, not affected negatively by an aveira. The mashal that's brought always is DNA. Someone has DNA for black hair. If they dye their hair black, that doesn't make their DNA any more strongly black. And if they dye their hair blonde, that doesn't make their DNA any less strongly black. It is what it is, right? Nothing, now you can fiddle around with DNA now, right? They know how to do that, okay. Well, hopefully they're going to cure a lot of stuff once they figure out how to do some of this, right? But they can also do all sorts of terrible things. But the DNA as a mushal is still a good mushal. Your DNA is what it is. Your DNA is black hair. So you have black hair. Beseder is going to turn gray at some point. But it's still the same DNA. Right? No matter what you do in Eilam Hazeh, a person could dye their hair blonde for 60 years every day. It will not affect the DNA. The DNA is they have black hair. That's who they are. That's who they really are. Their revealed reality is inconsistent with essential reality. Okay, fine, deal with it. Their husband doesn't know. Their husband thinks they're a blonde. Black hair, we can't figure this out. Right? The husband doesn't know. That's possible. No, he sees these bills every now and then because you have to keep dyeing it if you don't keep dyeing it. So the black roots are going to start showing up, right? Because that's who you are. Doesn't matter what you do. That's who you are. Okay, so by Yid, what's a Yid? A Yid is completely and totally connected to the Eibishter B'atzim. That's who we are. Might I act in this way, in a way that's inconsistent with that? That can happen. Okay, but is there a place in us that is that and is immutably that? Yes, and that's where Mesiras Nefesh comes from. Right? The ultimate Mesiras Nefesh. But Dugmas, what's it similar to in the story of Hanukkah? What did we find, so to speak? It revealed. So through their Mesiras miracle was a quid pro quo. Since you lived on the level of the Pach Echad mitzad your relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Yechidah Shebenefesh, so then they found a Pach Echad of Shemen that allowed them to perform the mitzvah. That same daughter in the same wrote that this weather, there was already serious rain happening. So when they were driving, this is like Miami rain, it's like you're in a shower when you stand outside. So that's what was happening. So they were driving and they got all their kids, our son-in-law was driving and our daughter had all the kids saying Tehillim the whole way. And they said, they explained to the kids, these people, especially based on the story, these people want to make a strong, proud expression of their Yiddishkeit, Eibishter. It can't be that you're not going to let them because it's raining. The rain stopped before they got to Townsville and they had a nice dry affair. That's like, right? What are you going to do? I mean, sometimes Eibishter doesn't listen, but sometimes he does listen, right? They're saying Dylan the whole way that the rain should stop. Baruch Hashem, it stopped. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there was no rain whenever they got there. Hine, al yedei avodah de Mesiras Nefesh, so that's them, and in Gashmiya, so they were able to fulfill the mitzvah. Hine, al yedei avodah de Mesiras Nefesh, mitzad Yechidah, through the avodah Mesiras Nefesh that comes from that level called Yechidah, al yedei zed dafka, specifically through that, menaschim es milchama, that's how you win the war. Ukamei shahaya b'milchemes ha'yevanim kipshuta, as it was in the milchama kipshuta, the whole thing was ridiculous. Right? It was literally a small band of people fighting the most powerful army in the world. It was just not normal. But they won. Al Yedei Mesiras Nefesh of Matisyahu Banav, that through the Mesiras Nefesh of Matisyahu Banav, the Av Shahayu Chaloshim Uma'atim, even though they were weak and they were few, Mikol Makam Amdu B'Mesiras Nefesh, they stood B'Mesiras Nefesh, which was completely and totally irrational, basically, right? It didn't make any sense to do this. If you had asked a Rav, he probably would have told you not to, similar to Pinchas, right? If Pinchas had asked the Rav, should he do what he did, he would have been told no. Mm-hmm. Pinchas is the source of this level of that you have to be careful when you say this. You have to understand it in the right context, right? But where there's a level of connection of the Yid to the Eibusher that transcends the Torah. Because the source of the Jewish neshama is higher than the source of the Torah. The Yid came first, right? Famous Medrash. The Medrash says, "Bereishis bar Elokim, base reishis." There's two firsts. What are the firsts? Yisrael v'Raisa. The two firsts. Reishis. So that's Bereishis Rabbah, and that's what Rashi quotes in Chumash. In Tanu de Belial, it asks which of those came first. Right? And the Medrash answers Yisrael. The Kosuv, the Torah, Daber b'nei Yisrael. The Torah is written that the Jewish people, they were, so to speak, there already. Right? Oh, so what does that mean in reality? Right? What does that mean in reality? Well, it means a lot, and you can understand it in terms of how the Rebbe asks us to relate to the rest of the Jewish people. Right? That if the Torah is first and then the Yid, then what is it that the Eibusher is really interested in? Torah. What's the Yid? The Yid is that vehicle to allow for the expression of Torah. What does the Eibusher love? What's closest to the Eibusher? Torah. Closest to the Eibusher. That's what he's interested in. And a Yid is that thing created in order to fulfill the Torah. What if the Yid doesn't fulfill the Torah? So then it's a brachal of a Torah. It's just useless. Right? Because what's the Eibusher interested in? Torah? And this Yid is not doing what he's supposed to do. He's just pashut useless. Right? Okay. That's not the way it works. How does it really work? What's the Eibusher really interested in? Yisrael. Right? All of creation was for the sake of Yisrael. What's the Torah? The Torah is the vehicle to allow the Yid to express who he truly is, who he or she truly is in Olam Hazeh. The Torah, so to speak, exists for the sake of the Jew. Now, that doesn't mean that you and I tell the Torah what to do. The Torah tells us what to do. Right? There's no question about that. That being said, the Torah is telling us what to do in order to allow us to reveal who we really are. So what about the Yid who doesn't do the Torah? He's still the most important thing in the eyes of the Eibusher. It's just a big fisfus. It's just so chaval, because he's not expressing who he really is, and so this incredible potential is going to waste. But that doesn't mean he's not what he is. He is that. It's the dearest thing in the eyes of the Eibusher. That incredible story. I'm sorry, I have to tell you the story. Incredible story of the Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe. In the 40s, in 770, so after the war, there were a lot of refugees who came to America. Now, a lot of these refugees were not quite as makpid on Torah and mitzvahs after the war as they were before the war, and they're certainly not for us to judge anybody who went through Gehenna, who came out the other side not exactly the same as they were when they went in. Right? Okay, so they went, but these people they were still hidden, right? And where did they gravitate to? Jewish places. I didn't know anything else, right? So they would come to 770, show up, and the Rebbe, our Rebbe, was downstairs, right? The Frierdiker Rebbe was upstairs. So the Rebbe, was more around in terms of what was not a lot. He was very busy, but learning all day, right? But so the Rebbe was very, very welcoming and very makpid that these people should feel at home in 770. And there were certain people around who said that it's not right. These are people who gave up in Torah and mitzvahs, and we shouldn't be encouraging such behavior. So the Rebbe went to ask the Frierdiker Rebbe, who's right? The Frierdiker Rebbe said an unbelievable thing. The Frierdiker Rebbe said that a father loves all of his children equally. But if there's someone if one of his children, chas v'shalom, has a handicap, he has a certain place in his heart for that child more than any other child. A child who was born without a limb or was born with a certain problem. Frierdiker Rebbe said, someone who doesn't put on tefillin in the morning, it's as if he doesn't have an arm. He's handicapped. His father loves him a lot. Wow. That is just unbelievable. That's what the Frierdiker Rebbe said. It's a handicapped child.
Somebody think that
Quickly, just he's not, because he's not thinking. It's coming from a place down with us. It's who he is. It's not what he's thinking. What's a good way of answering the question? Now you know why our Rebbe is our Rebbe, right? Well, I mean, who's his Rebbe?
Yeah.
Right? הנה, על ידי עבד ומסירת נפש מצד יחיד, על ידי זה דווקא מנצחים מסל מלחמה. כמו שהיה במלחמת 3 lines up. מלחמת יוון כפשוטה, על ידי מסירת נפש של מתתיהו בניו, אף שהיו חלשים ומעטים, they were weak and they were few. מכל מקום, they did something that was absolutely absurd, עמדו במסירת נפש להילחם נגד גיבורים ורבים. They stood במסירת נפש and said, "Azoi v'nit andrish." This situation is untenable. We will not stand by. If we have to die, we'll die, but we're not standing by to watch the desecration of Torah. Neged giborim v'rabim. Val yedei zeh, Erdu, they aroused, upalu, and caused gam anshe Doram. It started out just Mattasiyahu and his children, but ultimately a lot of the Yidden joined the rebellion, because it aroused in the Yidden also an appreciation of their connection to the Eibishter. Now, yes, we know it was a civil war, Yidden against Yidden, right? And right there, so and in all fairness, people say, and I even said it here, right, that it's it would be like the religious zealots, rising up to overthrow the non-religious authorities here in Eretz Yisrael at this point. But there is a rather large difference. There are no decrees against Yiddishkeit coming from the non-religious Jewish authorities here in Eretz Yisrael. Right? There's a huge difference between what was going on in Hanukkah and what's going on now. Right? Are they necessary? I mean, are they necessarily calling out in the name of Hashem? No, I wish they were. I say my wife was listening to a speech by the defense minister, and he was talking about this and how we're going to be victorious. It did not mention the Eibishter once. Right? Mentioned this amazing soldiers and the amazing this and the amazing that. Okay, what are you going to do? It's not his fault, right? But so that's very distressing. But no one is the Baruch Hashem. In no way, shape, or form are there decrees against Torah and mitzvahs in this country. As a matter of fact, the single biggest supporter of Torah learning in the world is the Israeli government. Right? They support Torah institutions more than any other single entity in the world, right? Okay, so you have to appreciate that, right? So it's definitely not the same as what was happening in Hanukkah. There are similarities. Yes, there is a, Greek-minded authority that's running the affairs of the Jews in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so that's unfortunate. But chas v'shalom to say they were the same, because the Jews at that point were instituting decrees against Yiddishkeit, mamish, serious decrees. And that's when the rebellion started. And once they started to rebel, what happened? All sorts of other people joined them. Right? Limsar nafsham al kiddush Hashem. In order to give up their lives, they were ready to give up their lives for the sanctity of the Eibishter's name. Shaloi lavar al adas b'shum eifin, to not transgress the laws of Yiddishkeit in any way, shape, or form. Because of that, they won. The victory came as a result of the Mesiras Nefesh of the Yidden. That's the story of Hanukkah. That's the legacy of Hanukkah, and that's the lesson of Hanukkah, right? And the Rebbe talks about this constantly. That's what chinuch is all about. Hanukkah is miloshin chinuch. How do we educate our children? We educate our children azoi v'nit andrish. There isn't any alternative to Torah and mitzvahs. That's what has to be, right? And hopefully our children, when they're running down the street, they don't grab their kippah and take it off as they're running. Right? No. And when they're playing sports, they've got their tzitzis on. You don't take off your tzitzis to play sports, and you don't take off your yarmulke to run for the bus. If your yarmulke falls off, you miss the bus, okay? Besides, you want to hold it on, but you don't take it off and run, right? Which you see so often. No, Right? What's the last thing that comes off? I'll say a chassid, but hopefully every yid. What's the last thing that comes off their head in the mikveh? The yarmulke. Not the first thing, the last thing. You're sitting there with no clothes on. You still have a yarmulke on. What's the second last thing that comes off? Tzitzis, right? And I can imagine that everybody in this room hasn't been asked a question at some point in the mikveh. Why is it that you leave your tzitzis on till the end if you're in a mikveh of everybody else? I'm asked that question once a year, I would imagine. Why do you Lubavitchers leave the tzitzis on till the end? And then they explain it's not right because the rest of you is naked. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. First of all, the last thing you want to take off is your tzitzis. Also wants to be the first thing you put on. You put on your t-shirt and you put on your tzitzis before anything else. Okay, but also what? Where do we learn that from? David HaMelech. David HaMelech took off his tzitzis. It's a Gemara, it's a medrash. David HaMelech took off his tzitzis. Then what did he say? Ui, how am I connected to the Eibishter? And then what did he say?
He looked down and
he saw his bris milah. Oh, so evidently, what could he see when he took off his tzitzis? Bris milah. Oh, so that's not so terrible, is it?
Where does he say this?
There's a medrash. I assume it's a Gemara, right?
Well, if it was a Gemara, you'd know it.
No, it's the page I haven't. I'm leaving one page off. So if someone asks, did you finish us? I'll say no. I don't want to schwitz.
I never heard that measures by David HaMelech. That's very good.
It's an amazing medrash. That's the source. That's the source in Nigla for what why we
I just
get
heard
dressed.
I think it was through from Reb Mendel or one of the,
Yeah. No, that's how we get dressed. That's how we get dressed. Everybody looks at us and they get annoyed at us. Okay, Beseder. It's not the only thing we do that annoys them. Beseder. Right? But that was the Friedrich Rebbe. America's nicht anders. Friedrich Rebbe came to America and said, "Azoiv nicht anders. There is no other way. There's only Yiddishkeit. Can you do it in America? You can do it in America exactly the same way you did it in Europe. No difference." And was unstoppable. It was unstoppable. That's Hanukkah. That's Chinuch. Hine, nitzochen melchoma shenasa.
Can I just ask you a question, just because of the time? What actually? Okay, I hear the thing about running to the bus before, and wearing your tzitzis at the end. This is the Mesiras Nefesh the Rebbe is talking to. What does he want from the Bachram sitting at this table, whether young Bachram or old Bachram? What is he really saying?
Mesiras Nefesh of our generation,
Yeah.
Rebbe says numerous times, Al tisbayesh mina maligim, not to be embarrassed by the people who scorn. Who scorn, who make fun of Yiddishkeit. Ridicule. The Rebbe says that many times. You might even say it at the end of this mimer, I don't remember. That is the Mesiras Nefesh of our generation.
Okay.
Right? Because there's all sorts of people out there who make fun of Yiddishkeit, Jews and non-Jews, or make fun of the whole idea of believing in God, etc., and not the meaning if. And how does that express itself today? Honestly, you're in an airport and you have to daven mincha. Don't be embarrassed that you're davening to God. The people who aren't davening to God should be embarrassed. Especially since they're all going to get on an airplane and fly 35,000 feet in the air going 500 miles an hour in this metal tube. Why are you not davening? What's wrong with you? You really think that this is a normal thing to do? You're suspended in midair. I mean, if you think about it, we're putting ourselves in an absolutely ridiculous. Now, we know it's safer than driving a car. Okay, but that being said, this is still a ridiculous situation to be in. Right? And we just don't even pay any attention. Okay, so I'll say some Tehillim. What's the problem? Right. Thank you, God, for getting me here. And we bench Gomel. Say, thank you, God. Appreciate that. Okay. So I have to be embarrassed. That the Rebbe mentions that a lot. Right? Numerous times. Because in our generation, Baruch Hashem, no one's putting a gun to our head and saying you can't keep Torah. There's almost no Jew in the world that isn't able to keep Torah and mitzvahs in any way that they feel is the proper way to do it. It's an amazing thing. When was the last time that happened in Jewish history? Right? Anywhere in the world, not just here, anywhere in the world. America, even though,
that
it's getting a little scary in America. No one's talking about outlawing Shabbos in America. They, bris milah, things like that. There are places where they're, in Sweden, they were talking about it. I don't think they actually did it, did they? But they were talking about it. I think
comes
Shechita,
up and it keeps the
right.
Shemitah.
Shechita, I think they did
comes
Asa.
up all the time.
Right. I
and,
think
you
they
know,
did
it keeps
Asa.
coming up.
Shechita. Right. Shechita, I think they did Asa. Right. Okay. So they get their meat from somewhere else. Right. But in general, the Yidden are able to. I mean, I did a Shabbaton in Stockholm 10 years ago. No problem. Little bizarre. Yud Shvat. I mean, Shabbos. You can't daven Shachris until about 9:30 in the morning, and the sun sets at about 3. So it's like the day is nighttime. We had all night, but the day it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's just crazy. You daven, you bring a little, you go meet lunch, and run back to shul. I mean, you take an hour off the day that you had last Shabbos on each side. Last Shabbos, you probably went home for an hour. Right, okay, take an hour off each side and see that's Stockholm in the winter. It was crazy. At 3 o'clock, we had to get up and go back to shul. Crazy. And they're all depressed because it's dark all the time. Right? Bunch of depressed people. V'hine, nitzochen b'cham shnasa yidei aveded mesiris nefesh, who nitzochen b'shleimus. Pada b'shalom. Same idea.
Right.
Same idea. It's pada b'shalom. Right? That's nitzochen b'shleimus because there's no room, there's no crack in the wall that the enemy can enter through because it's all elokus for the Yid. The Neisef al Zeh Shaved the Mesiris Nefesh, in addition to the fact that the Aved Mesiris Nefesh Liyeser Ba Mitzad the Etzim, it's coming from the Etzim. He Choderes B'Kol Keiches Nefesh, it penetrates therefore all the powers of the Nefesh Ad LeKoyach HaMaisa, even the powers of action. Why? Because the essence of something is the essence of every aspect of that thing. Where do you find someone's DNA? In the piece of skin that was left at the scene of the crime. Right? It's all there. His essence is all in that little thing there. I mean, it's hair, I think, as they say, it's RNA as opposed to DNA. It's all the same, right? Where's his genetic code? We'll find one hair at the scene of the crime and you know who was there. Right? His hair is completely and totally innocuous. If you cut it, it doesn't even hurt. Right? Okay. But you're all there. Everything about you is in that piece of hair. Right? So the essence of the soul is not something that's transcendent. It's the essence of every aspect of my soul. So that it's also the essence of my deeds. I just have to reveal that. Shebachol in Yonov, that in all of his matters, Nikar, it's recognized as dos tuta mesiris nefesh dike yid. That this it does a mesiris nefesh dike yid. Right? This is the Rebbe used to refer to a Mendel that way, mesiris nefesh dike yid. A Jew, you see Mesiris Nefesh in everything they do, even though they're not necessarily doing anything important right now, but that's just who they are. They just exude this energy of Elokus, and they're just so obviously connected to Elokus and not disconnected from Elokus. Al derech ma shekosav b'Avram, it says about Avram Avinu, Ekev asher shama Avram b'keili. Now the word Ekev, of course, means since, but what's the drasha? That even his Ekev, even his heel, expressed his connection to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ekev asher shama Avram b'keili shal yedei mesiris nefesh shaloi. That through his mesiris nefesh, Avram, of course, the prototype of mesiris nefesh, pa'al degami ha'ekev shaloi. He brought about that even his ekev, his heel, shama, heard, had dehert, and dehert means to hear, but also means to be sensitive to. Sivu Kadosh Baruch Hu. The sivu Kadosh Baruch Hu. Furthermore, that in addition to that, that's the basic understanding of nefesh, that it penetrates every aspect of our being, because the essence of something is the essence of all of it, right? And that's why bringing about a revelation of chaya shebenefesh, okay, beseder, but it's not going to penetrate into the essence of all aspects of my being, because it's not all aspects of my being. It's a particular aspect of me. Essence is the essence of everything, right? Furthermore, in addition to that, Shelagabi bechinas yechida ein shayach shum menagid. There's no opposition. All the different levels of the soul have an opposing force in the nefesh habahamis. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, action. Ruach can be speech, or ruach can be midas. Neshama, intellect. There's an intellect of the nefesh habahamis. There's midas of the nefesh habahamis. There's action of the nefesh habahamis. Chaya shebenefesh, ratzain. There's ratzain of the nefesh habahamis. We'll generally call it subconscious as opposed to superconscious. Okay, but there's a subconscious reality called the Yetzer Hara. What's that? That's the negative will, the will to disconnect from the Eibishter Chas v'Shalom. Okay, so in all aspects of the neshama, in all aspects of the soul, there's an opposing force in the nefesh habahamis, except Yechidah shebenefesh. Yechidah shebenefesh is, once that level is revealed, there's no opposition. Just is what it is. And again, how is that revealed? So that's revealed. What did we see in the last mimer? We learned the incredible chiddush that once a person is misbeinen on the fact that level exists in every single one of us, so then that thought itself and the resolution to act in accordance with that, right? You have a desire for some shtus in Olam Hazeh. Okay, so either physically or conceptually, look in the mirror. Who do you see? A yid. It's fascination. What am I going there for? It's not me. It's not who I am. Okay. Does that mean that the taiva disappears? No. But is it going to be easier to deal with the taiva? Yes. Can I deal with it b'shalom? Yes. 100%. That's what the Rebbe tells us. Right. So, right, who's a yid? A yid is someone. Well, there's that famous term, Mr. Springer talked about mincha. Mr. Springer was an askan for the Yidden in England, and he had a meeting. I believe it was Harold Wilson, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, in the days of Nixon, which means in the days of détente. I believe Harold Wilson actually went to Russia before Richard Nixon. Nixon was definitely the first one who went to China. But I think Harold Wilson went to Russia before Nixon went to Russia. He started détente. And, for those of you who don't know, that was huge. Russia was this bear over there that no one had anything to do with, and there was a real iron curtain in between one part of the world and the other. They had nothing to do with each other, at least in a revealed way. So I think Harold Wilson was the first one that went. So Mr. Springer was in his other. I heard this story from Fiverish Vogel, Shaliach in England, head Shaliachim in England. He told it here. So Yud Shvat, years ago, he was here. So Mr. Springer went in to meet Harold Wilson, and he was waiting in the outer office at 10 Downing Street. If you don't know where that is, so crawl out from under your rock. There's something outside of the continental United States, right? 10 Downing Street, and he was sitting in the outer office and waiting. Well, the sun was setting. So this poor guy, he's like, so he's waiting for the prime ministers. Now, of course, he knows as soon as he starts davening mincha, he's going to be asked to go in, right? So what can he do? He has to daven mincha. So he stands up and he faces the wall and starts davening mincha. Now, if he were having such kavanah, he wouldn't have a telephone conversation. But you and I all know we're going to hear the dahi. So he hears the secretary. We're going to hear the dahi. So he hears the secretary call into the prime minister. Mr. Prime Minister, yes, there's a Mr. Springer here to see you, and he's acting rather strange. He stood up and he's standing against the wall right now. So he's kind of, he's trying to double Shemana when he hears this in the background. So Harold Wilson walks out, looks at him, can't say anything. So he finishes Shemana Esrei, and I don't know whether he spit on the floor in Aleinu, but whatever. So when he finished his Shemana Esrei, and okay. So Harold Wilson asked him to come, and they were talking. He said, "Can I just ask you a question? What were you doing up there?" He said, "Well, Mr. Wilson, I'll tell you the truth. I was praying the afternoon prayer," and he explained we have to daven 3 times a day. He said, you're the Prime Minister of England, but there is someone who's even greater than you, and I can't keep him waiting. So Harold Wilson took out a piece of paper and a pen, wrote down something, and he gave it to me. He said, "This is that phone.
It's the what?
This number is that
Wow.
phone.
That's amazing.
Anytime you need something, you can call me." What did he need? When Harold Wilson went to Russia, what did the West want from the Russians? The Russians, no one knew this, but we found out later. They had no money, they had no food, they had no nothing, right? So they needed to trade with the West. What was the commodity that the West wanted from them? We didn't need their cars, we had fine cars. Not just Jews, anybody, human rights, loosening up with human rights. Okay. So they started making certain deals with human rights. So Mr. Springer called Harold Wilson and asked him to add a name to the list. His name was Mendel Futterfass.
Wow.
That's how Mendel got out. He had a relative in London. Right? That's why he could do it.
Yeah.
So Mendel got out. Mendel's family was in London.
I never heard that.
Mendel once, what it was that he, I don't remember what it was that he asked. Anyway, he was in Russia and he asked the Rebbe something. I remember what it was. Why don't I remember? Anyway, I must have written it down somewhere. I'll try to find it. He asked the Rebbe something. The Rebbe, he was in Russia, obviously, when he was asking the Rebbe. He's sitting there in his mokshava, just davening, asking the Rebbe for some help for something. The Rebbe should intercede with the Eibishter and make something happen. So the family got a letter in London, which was the answer to Mendel's question. When Mendel came, the family gave him the letter. So this came from the Rebbe, and he noticed the date. That's when he was sitting and thinking about it. The Rebbe had answered and sent it to London. When he got out, he got the letter. That was Mendel. But that, what did he do? You have to daven mincha. Now you're in the Prime Minister of Britain's office. Okay, the Seder. I can understand we feel a little intimidated. He's the Prime Minister of Britain. Okay, but I understand. You're not going to daven mincha?
It was this guy,
Mr. Springer. That's all I remember his name. Mr. Springer. I don't know who he was. He was asking, and he wasn't like this super Hasidic Yid. He was just someone who. He had to do with the liaison of the Jewish community with the British government, and he was there to see. So that's the story that Farish Vogel told here about how Mendel got out. It was added to the list. Because remember, everybody knew, right, that they were talking about certain people could get out, and they started showing up in the West. Certain people, right? Mendel was one of them. Okay, we have to stop. Where did we get to here? We near the end of that paragraph? Where did we get to?
Yeah.
Mashenke, and let's just finish the paragraph then. Hine, oidzais, furthermore, the ein shaykh shu menaged, the baveris al pitam vadas, the avedo pitam vadas, a fila baveris al amaylam pitam vadas, a kshurim pitam vadas, 4 lines up. Even the level that's beyond intellect, that's connected intellect, shaykh shia menaged, it's possible to convince me otherwise. I'll hear something and it'll change my mind. Or I'll lose the inspiration, and therefore I won't necessarily be so connected to that reality. When a person arouses this level of him that is completely and totally connected to the Eibishter, Ein Shayach Shia Menaged, there is no opposition. When this level is revealed, this affects the Nefesh Bahamis. She'etzem achumnius, the Nefesh Bahamis, the essential material nature of the Nefesh Bahamis, mishapech, is transformed in a kotza lakotza, that the person's conscious reality becomes interested in Elokus. That's Nefesh Bahamis, is conscious you and me. Okay. We have 2 more classes, and Bez Shem will finish the Maimer
The story with Reb Mendel and the tightrope, he's in prison. It's the hardest part. You got to keep focused when you're. The hardest part's when you have to spin around. what did he say? How did he? I don't remember how he phrased that part. I was trying to tell the story to somebody. But when the heart, he's a tightrope guy, and he says, keep your eye on the. And he said the hardest part is when you have to turn. And I don't remember where the conversation was on that.
I hear you. I don't know.
I'll have to look it up.
Okay.
I saw a guy in the park yesterday, gun soccer, and I guess that's the thing now in Israel. People doing tight wars, so they strap these straps between trees.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they practice walking. You know, like
Oh yeah.
off the ground. So I went and told the guy that this is emotional. I said, "Let me tell you a story."
Wow. Never heard that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we will see you Bezrat tonight.